Crystal Gonzalez, and she comes from the Community College of Aurora, is currently enrolled at CU studying architectural engineering.
Hi, thank you, Alicia, for that introduction. Well, hello. For the ones that doesn't know about what's a Pika, I would like to introduce you to it. Pika, think about like a Pikachu with the little mouse and Mickey Mouse, and they're so cute and tiny, and you can see on the picture. And Pikas are mammals that are really pretty sensitive to high and low temperatures. And I don't know if you know, but pikas could die after 2 hours of high exposure temperatures. They're really such a unique animals because they do not shed heat. So that means, so me and you, we go to the gym, we walk, and we sweat to disperse the heat that our body contains. Pikas do not do that, and that's why they're not great with high temperatures. My name is Crystal, and I'm an undergraduate student and intern at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I currently work in this summer on the Niwot Rich Long-Term Ecological Research Program, where our research is focusing how the American pika behaves and adapts during the continuous climate changes. My project for these 9 weeks is a study where we compare downscaled temperature models with the temperature record obtained from sensors. And my big question was to find if the models represent the precise temperatures that pikas are experiencing in their territories. Next slide. A little bit of background. As the climate change is getting worse and worse and worse, many species are expected to shift their distributions. Research use models to infer how species will shift and assess whether they will lose their ecological services. And however, most of these models are used to predict species distributions, and they're based on environmental variables recorded at the large scales, which might not represent the environmental for these small animals that experience. Research need accurate temperatures to understand how the pika is responding to the climate change. Downscaled temperature from models like PRIMS, P-R-I-S-M, could be different from temperatures measured in the field. In this project, we approached the idea to analyze this hypothesis, which is again, if these models represent the precise temperatures that pikas are experiencing on the territories. So what I did, we split this project in 2 parts. Next slide, please. So splitting this project into parts, in the part 1, if you see the graph on the left, what we did, it was determine the variation in temperatures recorded by sensors in the field. There were 19 sensors that they were deployed in a single point near the study site from November 2020 to June 2021. Data from these 19 sensors were analyzed to obtain the standard error of monthly mean, minimum, and maximum temperatures measured inside. And part 2, right graph, was to compare the field data on ambient temperature at the Pika study and the Niwot Ridge that were collected by several U and H series Hubble deployed in sequence during 2015 and 2019. These field data were compared with the PRIMS grid monthly climate data at 800 meters resolution downscaled from study point. Next slide, please. So this is the analytic process. First, we measure the error field sensors, which is the 19 sensors that we were talking about, calculating the 95% confidence interval monthly average, minimum and maximum temperature. And then we use per t-test to determine whether standard error different between monthly average, minimum and maximum temperatures. Next slide. So the results for part 1 was that all field sensors measure agree between 1/2 of the degree, which is great, saying these sensors are, well, some of these sensors are 20 years old and they're still measuring the data accurate, and that was great. The errors of the field sensor temperatures were not related to the absolute temperature in our test. So then after this, we can move to the next part. Next slide. Thank you. And the part 2, we obtained downscaled temperature data for a specific location where ambient temperature had been measured for several years during the Pika study, obtaining the mean and the standard error of monthly average, minimum, and maximum temperature from field sensor deployed in a sequence at the specific location. So if you see on the graph here, there is the average, the maximum, minimum, and only the average was well, no, not even that much, but like only 16% was accurate with the downscale data and the sensor data. Next slide. And using the appropriate standard errors values of the monthly average, minimum, and maximum temperature measured in the field, we determined that whether each downscale temperature static fell within the 95% confidence interval of the corresponding field temperature statics. So if you see the three graphs, we have three. We have the average, the minimum, and the maximum temperature. The blue one is the field temperature that we measure with our sensors, and the orange one is the downscale model that it should follow, right? But the only one that we can see here is the average is kind of accurate, and the problem is that the minimum and the maximum are not. If you see closely, there is some points that there is 10 to 12 degrees difference, and this is the problem for Pikas. Next slide, please. Because downscale monthly minimum and maximum temperature almost never fell within the 95 confidence interval of the field data. And the minimum and maximum were not far less extreme than values measured in the field, meaning that like for Pikas, this is super bad. So just think about as a research, we're trying to think about how their survival and demographics, but if our data is not accurate, how can we explore this and have the right data? Next slide. Our results show that the downscale model failed to predict the inside temperature and the rocky slope habitat by Pikas. And it is important to measure the environmental variables experienced by these Pikas or any organisms because they will interfere with their demographics and survival. Next slide. And I just want to thank Dr. Ray and Airy because they were the most wonderful people ever to work with. Thank you to Dr. Chris because she not only gave me the data and the scientific knowledge, but she was such an amazing and kind human. And I had to be honest, I didn't even know what was a pika. I didn't even know many terms in the beginning of these riches. And I think I asked her not one, but many, many times. And she was just so patient with me. To Airy, thank you because she was there before our internship start and she was always explaining everything as well. And it was great to give me the opportunity to hike with her, to observe these pikas, to hold these pikas. And thank you because you really are a remarkable person. And thanks to the RECCS team, Beck, Alicia, Dana, Jeff, Annie, like you guys are amazing. And thanks to the RECCS program because they really give a really good opportunity to understand what's the research. And next slide. So I'm open for any questions if you guys have anything or yeah, thank you.
All right, great job, Crystal. I have a question here for you. Does the model show that max and minimum temperatures are fluctuating at higher levels than when it was developed?
So the data, so this is the thing. So we only collect 1 year data just because the amount of time that we have. And honestly, it's just like maybe it's the model that we use that they're not accurate because there is many, but the problem is like these models in many papers that I read about research done in these models they're not accurate. So yeah.
Okay. And Chris says, thanks for your help in pushing this project forward. Would you like to describe what we are doing to collect correct data instead of using downscaled data?
Yes, so the Pika team pretty much has sensors on the tile, under the tile, because so Pikas live pretty much, they go under the tile. So like in the ground, if we're in the ground, Pikas go 1 to 3 meters down the ground. So they have sensors down in the ground. They also have sensors on the trees to measure the different temperatures. When we go to the field, we go and observe Pikas for survival and demographics. we also trap Pikas to tag them and go the next year and see if they're in the field. Yes.
Okay. All right. Great job. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the next presenter, but there is one more question in the chat. So I'll ask you to answer. Actually, there's 2 more questions now in the chat that I'll ask you to answer in the chat as we move on to this next presenter.